Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video. And today I thought I would do the end of the year book tag. So this tag, I think was initially created by Ariel Bissett. I don't think I've been tagged, but I might have been. I'm so behind on watching BookTube videos right now. I've got like 300 videos in my watch later playlist, including several end of the year book tags, which I always really enjoy watching. So I thought I would make that today. And there are just 6 questions about your kind of end of the year reading, I suppose. So the first question, we'll start off at the beginning, as would make sense, is are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? So there are a couple of books I'm currently reading that I definitely want to finish. I mean, I will hopefully read many books before the end of the year. There's still another like 6-7 weeks to go. But there are a few books that I am partway through that I've been reading for a while, or that are sort of slower reads that I'm hoping to finish by the end of the year. So I'm currently hosting a read-along of Charles Dickens' Bleak House, reading about 10 chapters a week until the end of the year. Really enjoying this so far. I'm not actually reading this physical edition. I'm listening to an audiobook, but I'm really loving it. So I'm hoping, well, I definitely will finish that by the end of the year. Then I'm also really hoping that I will finally finish Varney the Vampire by the end of the year. So I didn't actually start this year. I started this last year, and I've got about 150 pages left. No, less than that now. Yeah, about 100 pages left, so I really ought to finish this by the end of the year. And what I have learned from reading Varney the Vampire, this Victorian penny dreadful, over a really long period of time, is that I don't like reading things over a really long period of time. I like to read a book and then have finished the book, and doing a long, slow read of something really doesn't work for me at all. So I shouldn't try that again. And what I should have done when I realised that I didn't like doing a long, slow read and that this book is so physically massive that it's not very practical as your like main read, what I should have done is got Varney the Vampire on my Kindle and read it on my Kindle, but I didn't do that and I'm still reading it, and I kind of now feel like I must persevere with this edition, which is really fun because it has all the original illustrations and it's like laid out like a Victorian penny dreadful, which is really fun, but also I find exceptionally difficult to read, hence why I've made myself a little cut out bookmark so that I can avoid looking at the column that I'm not reading. But anyway, I feel like I would really like to have finished Ryder the Vampire by the end of this year, considering I wanted to finish it last year, so I'll see how I go. And then finally, I'm also reading 2 short story collections that, you know, if I don't finish them this year, not the end of the world, as they're individual short stories within the collections, but it would be nice to. So I've read one story from this is the Gothic Tales of Sheridan and Fanu, a wonderful Victorian writer who I really love. Started this in October, would like to read the rest of the stories before the end of the year if I can manage to. And then I'm also partway through this is the Persephone book of short stories, so I am probably about a third of the way through this, maybe a quarter. I've read quite a few stories, really enjoyed them all. Some of the stories in this have been great actually. I think my favourite so far was Holiday Group by E.M. Delafield. I thought was just great. I really like Persephone books and I've been really enjoying this collection, so I would really like to finish it before the end of the year. And then the second question for the end of the year book tag is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? I mean, I feel like I'm probably filming this a bit late because it's now, you know, November, mid-November, it's basically winter. But in terms of an autumnal book, I wouldn't say I'm a massively seasonal reader, but I guess I didn't realise when I began a Bleak House read-along in November that Bleak House begins in November and is quite autumnal at the beginning. So I guess that's kind of an autumnal read. But yeah, I'm not sure. As I said, not an especially seasonal reader, although I do have like some festive Christmassy books I'm hoping to read in December. I do quite like a Christmassy read, but in terms of like just seasonal change, I feel like I don't tend to read particular books at particular times of year unless it's for readathons, I suppose. Question 3 is there a new release that you're still waiting for? And no, there isn't. I think, as I said, I'm filming this a little bit late and a lot of the new releases are out by now. I don't think there's that many books left to come out before the end of the year. Although one book that just came out last week, in fact only a few days ago, I think it only came out on Thursday, so a very new release that I'm very excited to read is this. This is The Austen Christmas Murders by Jessica Bull. So this is the 3rd book, or maybe the 2nd and a half book in the Miss Austen Investigate series, and this is a Christmas novella. So the Miss Austen Investigate series follows Jane Austen solving crimes, which is just marvellous. I loved the first two books so much, and Jess is just like such a whiz on all things Jane Austen. We have very similar taste in and opinions of Jane Austen and have had many good chats about Jane Austen. We're published by the same publisher and we know each other pretty well, and I'm just so excited for her new Christmas novella. So the idea behind the Miss Austen Investigate series is that every book is like a homage to a different Jane Austen novel. So the first one is Northanger Abbey, the second one is Sense and Sensibility, and this novella, fittingly, is Jess's homage to Lady Susan, which I'm very excited for because I love Lady Susan, so I think that'll be really fun. And yeah, I just think this will be really festive and lovely, and it's only really short, so I'm looking forward to reading this before the end of the year. This is just out last week, I think, and yeah, very much looking forward to it. Question 4 is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? And I'm just going to ignore the number 3 in that question because I have many books I want to read before the end of the year. Obviously, I've already mentioned quite a few, but there are some others as well that I would like to read by the end of the year. I'm not going to read all of these by the end of the year because, you know, there's only 6 to 7 weeks left of the year, I think now, and I also have like various other reading plans in December. But I do have 2 books out from the library that I have had out from the library for about 3 months, and no one else has reserved them, so I can just keep renewing them, but I do feel like it would be good to finish them off and hand them back to the library by the end of the year. So I have here God's Bits of the Woods by Sembène Ousmane, and I think this is, oh, I've got a bookmark in here. That's how much I really intended to start reading it and didn't. So this was one of the books for page turners with catchers reading the Globe Classics challenge earlier in the year, and I was doing really well with that challenge in the first half of the year and was reading all of the books, and then I just fell off it completely in the second half of the year because I've just been so busy with work. But I did really want to read this, and I've still got out from the library, so I'm hoping I will read it before the end of the year. And then the other book I have out from the library is The Landleaguers by Anthony Trollope, which I'm also hoping to read by the end of the year, but we'll see. If I read this in January, it's not the end of the world, and I can read this on ebook for free as well if I end up giving this back to the library. Although, you know, as I said, no one else has wanted it for 3 months, so maybe I could just keep it for a really long time. I don't know what the limit of renewal is at my library, but I have not yet reached it. I might read this before the end of the year, we'll see. But that leads me on to some other things I want to read before the end of the year, because one of my goals for 2025 was to finish reading all of the novels of Anthony Trollope. I am not going to quite manage to do it in 2025. I have 4 left, and I don't want to shove 4 Anthony Trollope novels into 7 weeks in a way that means I enjoy them slightly less. So the 4 I have left are The Landleaguers, Castle Richmond, John Caldigate, and Marion Fay. I'm reading Castle Richmond in November. I'm about to start it. I've got a buddy read lined up, and I've got a buddy read lined up in December for Marion Fay. So those 2 I will definitely finish before the end of the year. I will hopefully finish The Landleaguers too, because it's not very long. But maybe not. Again, if I read it in January, not the end of the world. The final Anthony Trollope book, John Caldigate, I think I'm going to leave for January. I've also heard really, really good things about John Caldigate, so I feel content about making it my final Anthony Trollope book. And then my idea is that I will finish all of the works of Anthony Trollope in January, February at the latest, and then make, you know, like a week's worth of Anthony Trollope videos. I have many video ideas when I finish all of his books. I have some massive tier ranking plans. I'm very excited. So yeah. However, you know, as if those weren't enough books, I also have another goal for 2025, which I have fallen behind on, which was to read the 19 books that have been on my TBR for the longest. And I've read 12 of them, which I don't think is too bad, all things going, but I would like to read some of the 7 I have left. These are the 7 books that are left on my long-term physical TBR. These are only 6 books here because the other one is the Persephone book of short stories, which I am already reading. So hopefully I will finish that by the end of the year, and then hopefully I'll read 3 out of these 6. I don't think I'm going to read all of them. I'm probably not going to read The Story of the Stone Volume 3 this year because it's very long, and I did read Volume 2 earlier this year. I think I'll save this for early in 2026. But I would like to read some of the others. Maybe I'll try and read Patrick Gale's A Perfectly Good Man because I really like Patrick Gale, and I feel like I'll definitely enjoy this. I also would really like to read The Devil's Finger by Sandra Bond. I really like her writing, so I know I'll enjoy this. And then will I get to any of these 3 before the end of the year? I don't know, but I would like to. I'll see how I go. There's only so many weeks left in the year, and if I don't finish all of the 19 books that have been in my TBR for the longest, I did read 12 of them this year, and that's good, so it's fine. Then question number 5 for this tag is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favourite book of the year? So maybe, but probably not. My favourite 2 books of the year so far would have to be Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon and The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall, and I feel like very certain that those are my favourite books of the year so far, like my favourite contemporary and my favourite classic. And I've read a lot of fantastic books this year, but those 2 are so good and have stood out so much for me and are sort of new favourites of all time level books that I don't think many things would top them. Saying that, of course, I am intending to read 2 more books by Anthony Trollope, at least, if not 3, before the end of the year, and Anthony Trollope is one of my all-time favourite authors. So it's possible that one of those Anthony Trollope books might become a favourite of the year or, you know, tied with The Well of Loneliness. But The Well of Loneliness was so incredible and I was so utterly moved by it that I feel like probably nothing will top it. And the same with Glorious Exploits. Like, I can't really imagine reading something else this year that would beat it. I just think about those 2 books constantly. You know, I feel like for the last couple of years when I got to make my like favourite books of the year video, I did lots of deliberating and considering and wondering what my favourite book of the year was and trying to choose one, whereas this year I'm like, no, I have 2 favourite books of the year. They are definitely my favourites of the year. They were just so good that how could anything else be my favourite of the year? So I feel like those are unlikely to be unseated in the final 6-7 weeks of the year, but you never know. And then finally, the 6th question for the end of the year book tag is, have you already started making reading plans for 2026? So sort of, yes. Well, definitely yes, to a certain degree. So there are a few like projects that I'm looking forward to taking part in. So I'm hoping to host a read-along of Les Miserables by Victor Hugo myself in the early few months of the year. I read Les Miserables as a teenager and absolutely loved it, and I just really want to reread it. So I'm hoping to host a read-along from January to March. There will be a proper announcement up at some point, though I feel like I've spoken about it enough now that it doesn't really need announcing. But that'll be hosted on my 19th century literature read-alongs Discord server. I'll leave that link down below. And I'm really looking forward to reading Les Mis because, yeah, I just loved it so much as a teenager. Then I'm also currently taking part in Jen the Librarian's Thomas Hardy read-along, which actually reminds me there are 2 Thomas Hardy books I need to read before the end of the year. But anyway, I'm really enjoying taking part in the read-along, reading Thomas Hardy's books in publication order, and that's continuing on into next year, so I will be continuing with that. Really looking forward to that. And also Roy from Roy Reads Anything has just announced a read-along or reading project reading neglected, forgotten Victorian bestsellers, which I just think is such a wonderful idea, and I'm really looking forward to taking part in that next year. I think he's got 12 or 13 books and I've only read 2 of them before, so I'm looking forward to discovering all those new great forgotten Victorian books. I think that's just a wonderful project. So there's definitely a few reading projects I'm looking forward to taking part in next year. In terms of my own like personal reading projects rather than like reading events, I have been thinking that maybe I will have a low goal year next year, by which I don't mean like a goal to read less or anything, but I mean like fewer goals. I've really enjoyed this year having like a few focus goals, you know, my Anthony Trollope goals and my reading more internationally and my long-term physical TBR, and I found that really helpful. And because I've been really focused on those goals, I've kind of not been thinking very much about how long my TBR is or about my reading goals spreadsheets. You know, I feel like usually in November, rather than doing the end of the year book tag, I go through my reading goals spreadsheet and look at all the gaps I have and think about all the books I could use to fill it. And I just didn't really feel like motivated to do that this year. I feel like I have lots of systems for reading goals and I enjoy them for like 4 years and then I slightly go off them. And I feel like maybe the era of the crazy reading goal spreadsheet is over, and maybe next year I'll do something slightly different. I was vaguely toying with the idea of doing like monthly goals instead of yearly goals, because I really love taking part in readathons, and I always really enjoy, like, this month I'm reading Victorian literature, this month I'm reading Jane Austen related things, and I feel like maybe it would be quite fun to set myself like a little mini reading challenge every month of like, I haven't read any crime for ages. This month I'm going to read 5 crime books. This month I'm going to read 5 fantasy novels. This month I'm going to read 5 French novels. This month I'm going to read 5 Edwardian novels, whatever it might be. I feel like it might be fun to think of a few like monthly prompts and then use them to like guide half of my reading, say, in a month. I don't know. I will see. I feel like I'm going to do my reading goals slightly differently for 2026. And I was also thinking that maybe 2026 should be the year of French literature, partly because I'm planning to do a read-along of Les Miserables. And then I was thinking of a few other French writers who I've really enjoyed, like Alexandre Dumas or Jules Verne. And then I was thinking of a few other French authors who I really want to read things by. You know, I've read one book by George Sand, but I definitely want to read more. I really need to read some Emile Zola. I've heard very good things about him. I feel like I would like his books. And I feel like there's quite a lot of French classics that are like vaguely on my radar, but I haven't got to. And I feel like maybe I'll just make 2026 the year of French classics and maybe French contemporary literature too. I probably know less where to start there, but with French classics, there's like a lot of things I do want to read. You know, in previous years, I've had an international classics challenge that is like, here are my 4 countries and I'm gonna try and read some books from all of them. And then this year I was like, let's see how many different countries I can read from. And I feel like next year, maybe I'll go complete back the other way and be really, really focused and be like, I'm going to try and read as many French classics as possible. I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind in 6 weeks' time by the time I do a reading goals video, but that's what's vaguely in my head at the moment, just because I keep thinking of French classics that I want to read. And I'm just so excited to reread Les Miserables. So yeah, I'll see what I get read by the end of the year. Probably not that much, to be honest, of the things I just talked about here, because I actually have a whole like separate plan for December, which I'll get to in December. But, you know, I'll hopefully read some of these. And that'll be nice. Okay, that's more than enough ramble from me for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.